Welcome back to the channel where silence speaks louder than words, and the people they called nothing come back as everything. Here, every story begins with rejection, betrayal, and those unforgettable moments at the family table where love was conditional and respect was earned by someone else. But what they didn't see? Pain turning into power. In these stories, husbands hide secrets, families choose favorites, and the ones overlooked are quietly rewriting their destiny. Then one day, they vanish. No warning, no closure, just a disappearance that leaves guilt, truth, and regret behind. And when they return, it's never for forgiveness, it's for something far more unforgettable. If you've ever been underestimated, ignored, or pushed aside, these stories are going to hit differently, because sometimes the strongest revenge isn't loud, it's becoming someone they can never reach again. The words didn't just sting, they planted something. Some kids make you proud, others just take up space. Spoken so casually, like it was truth instead of cruelty. Plates clinked, forks scraped, and no one flinched. Not even the man who once whispered promises of loyalty and protection. That silence cut deeper than anything said out loud. Every dinner after that felt like a quiet performance. Smiles for others, indifference for one. Achievements overlooked, efforts dismissed. And behind it all, a husband who saw everything and chose comfort over courage. Late nights became routine, but not for work. Messages hidden, calls stepped away from, a growing distance that no one bothered to explain. The betrayal didn't arrive all at once. It unfolded slowly, in glances, in hushed tones, in the way attention was given elsewhere. Then came the truth no one intended to reveal, a conversation overheard, a name repeated too often, a secret relationship carefully hidden behind polite excuses. The same man who stayed silent at that table had found his voice somewhere else. That was the moment everything shifted. Not a confrontation, not a breakdown, just a quiet understanding that nothing in that house was built on love, only convenience and illusion. Endurance turned into strategy. Every cruel word, every act of neglect, every betrayal became fuel. Plans formed in silence, skills sharpened in the background. While they continued seeing someone invisible, something powerful was being built beyond their reach. Then one day, there was nothing left to see. No goodbye, no warning, just absence. At first, it didn't matter to them. Life continued just as it always had. But slowly, cracks began to form. Questions surfaced. The husband, once distant, now unsettled. Secrets have a way of unraveling when the one holding them disappears. And when the truth of his betrayal came to light, it didn't just damage him, it destroyed the image they had all protected. By the time success became visible, it was already too late. Regret filled the spaces where arrogance once lived. Apologies followed, explanations, excuses. But some seeds once planted don't grow into forgiveness. They grow into something far more unforgettable. And this time, the silence belonged elsewhere. Favoritism has a sound. It's subtle but unmistakable. The softer tone, the warmer smile, the way pride is handed to one and withheld from another like it was never deserved. That house thrived on it. Every achievement from the right child was celebrated like a victory. Every effort from the other side of the table was met with silence, or worse, comparison. And sitting right there, watching it unfold night after night, was the man who once promised partnership, a husband in name, but never in action. Indifference became his language. When the insults came, he looked down at his plate. When the comparisons grew sharper, he stayed quiet. And when the distance between them widened, he didn't try to close it. He simply stepped further away. It didn't take long to realize that silence wasn't weakness, it was choice. Then came the first crack in his carefully controlled world. A late-night message that wasn't meant to be seen. A name saved under something meaningless, but repeated too often to ignore. Curiosity turned into certainty, and certainty into something colder than anger. The betrayal wasn't emotional, it was deliberate. Meetings disguised as work, calls taken outside, a second life built in the shadows while maintaining the image of a perfect husband in the light. And the most painful part? It wasn't even hidden well. It didn't need to be. No one expected resistance from someone already dismissed as less than. That's where he was wrong. Nothing was said, no confrontation, no accusations, just observation. Every lie noted, every inconsistency remembered. While he grew comfortable in deception, something else was quietly taking shape. Patience sharpened into precision. The family continued as they always had, blind to everything except their own hierarchy. But the foundation they stood on was already cracking, because the truth wasn't just about betrayal, it was about exposure. When the time came, it wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, just undeniable. Evidence placed exactly where it couldn't be ignored. Secrets laid bare in front of the same people who once dismissed everything. The perfect husband shattered first. The family followed. And in the silence that came after, there was finally something they couldn't overlook anymore. Not absence, not weakness, but the cost of underestimating someone who had been watching all along. Disappointment wasn't said once, it was repeated until it felt like a name. It showed up in small ways at first, a sigh after speaking, a glance exchanged across the table, the kind of quiet judgment that never needed to be explained because it was always understood. Nothing was ever enough. Not the effort, not the patience, not even the silence. And beside it all stood the husband, never cruel, never kind, just distant, detached in a way that felt colder than anger. The kind of man who let things happen, who watched everything fall apart without ever stepping in to stop it. That distance started to make sense over time. Late nights became routine, excuses repeated until we sounded rehearsed. There was always somewhere else to be, someone else to answer to. The truth didn't arrive all at once. It surfaced slowly, piece by piece, like something buried but never fully hidden. A receipt left behind, a name spoken too casually, a message that lingered just long enough to be seen. And suddenly, everything became clear. The man who stayed silent during every insult had no trouble speaking elsewhere. The same man who couldn't defend his own home had built another life outside of it, one where attention, affection, and effort weren't in short supply. That's when disappointment stopped hurting, because it stopped mattering. There was no confrontation, no need for it. The truth had already done its damage. Every word once used to diminish had turned into something sharper: awareness, control, and eventually resolve. The disappearance wasn't planned in a moment of anger. It was built over time, quietly and carefully. Every detail considered, every step measured. And when the moment came, it wasn't emotional, it was final. No note, no warning, just absence. At first, they didn't notice. Why would they? Someone labeled insignificant rarely leaves a visible gap. But absence has weight. It settles into spaces, into routines, into conversations that suddenly feel incomplete. And then the truth followed. Not just about the betrayal, but about everything. The secrets the husband thought were hidden, the lies that held the family together, the reality they all chose to ignore. One by one, it unraveled, and by the time they finally understood what was lost, it was no longer theirs to find. Because some labels don't define a life, they ignite it. And this time, the disappearance wasn't a loss. It was the beginning of something they would never be part of again. Perfection is easy to believe when no one looks too closely. From the outside, that family had everything. Laughter at the right moments, celebrations shared online, a husband who appeared steady and reliable. But inside those walls, something quieter lived. Neglect didn't scream, it whispered. It showed up in what was ignored, in what was never defended. Every time the comparison started, every time worth was questioned, the same pattern followed. Eyes turned away, conversations shifted, and the husband, always present, always aware, chose silence like it was easier than truth. That silence wasn't harmless. It protected something. At first, it felt like indifference. Then it started to feel like distance, and eventually it revealed itself as something else entirely. Late evenings stretched longer. Calls were answered in another room. Smiles appeared when looking at a screen, but never across the table. The signs were there, scattered and subtle, until they weren't subtle anymore. The truth didn't explode. It unfolded. A message seen at the wrong time, a conversation not meant to be overheard, a name spoken with familiarity that didn't belong. Piece by piece, the illusion cracked. The man who stayed quiet through every moment of disrespect had no trouble investing himself somewhere else. Not accidentally, intentionally. That was the betrayal no one else noticed. Because to the family, the problem had always been someone else, the one they labeled, the one they overlooked. It was easier to believe in that narrative than to question the man who played his role so well. But roles don't last forever. The shift didn't come with anger, it came with clarity. Every ignored moment, every silent betrayal, every hidden truth became part of something bigger. Not pain, purpose. While they continued living inside their illusion, something real was being built outside of it. Quiet progress, careful planning, a life no longer tied to their approval or their neglect. And then, one day, the illusion lost its audience. No confrontation, no explanation, just a clean break that left behind more questions than answers. At first, they clung to their version of reality, but truth has a way of surfacing. His secrets didn't stay hidden. The careful image he protected started to collapse under the weight of what he'd concealed. And suddenly, the family had no choice but to see everything they ignored. Not just his betrayal, but their own. Because while they were busy deciding who mattered and who didn't, they never realized what they were losing until it was already gone. And by then, the one they dismissed as nothing had become something they could never reach again. Before you go, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that exposes hidden truths, shocking betrayals, and powerful comebacks. Drop a comment if you've ever felt underestimated. And remember, the best revenge is always the one they never see coming.